In this episode, I'm going to talk about my battle with anxiety. So I come from a long line of women that worry. My mom was a master worrier, and I think families tend to pass down these traits. I mean, if you have people that are in a certain socioeconomic place in life, their offspring tend to stay in that certain kind of thing. It's kind of like our identity, right? And so all I learned from my mother was how to worry. And so when I was a young adult and going into like being on my own and everything, I think I thought this was completely normal and something that just people did, like worry. That's just what we do. But as time went on, I started to realize that it was getting worse and worse and that it wasn't quite normal. It was interesting because I went from like just worrying about normal, like everyday kind of things to really having full on, like down on the ground in the fetal position panic attacks. So I really started to understand that stuff was not normal. Back when I was engaged to my now husband, we had gone through a kind of a time where there was several things that went on that you could say would spur on some panic attacks like this, but it still kind of was beyond the normal reaction. So like, first of all, my husband had fallen and broken his leg while cross-country skiing, and I was at work and had not had my phone on me, and it came back to a whole bunch of phone calls on my phone with the message, Michele, there's been an accident, you need to call me back, from one of his coworkers. So that completely like, oh, like it's way my worst nightmare kind of thing. Then I found out my mother had stage 4 terminal cancer. I mean, that alone could send you into something. And then my husband again got in a car accident while he was on a scooter, and I happened to drive by and see all of the sirens and, you know, all the flashing lights and all this kind of stuff. And so those incidents like all kind of combined together. Plus, this is important, I also got diagnosed with hypothyroidism during this period of time as well. All kind of were together into creating these massive panic attacks where if my husband was maybe 2-3 minutes late and I didn't know where he was, this was before the smartphone tracking and all that kind of stuff, I would literally be on the floor, bawling, shaking, crying, like, I mean, just so freaked out. And I didn't like, I mean, breathing exercises, none of that stuff, none of that would help at all. I was just like, the anxiety was just so overcoming to me. Now, one of the reasons why I say the hypothyroidism diagnosis is very important, because anxiety is one of the classic hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's, hyperthyroidism kind of symptoms. And so I'm sure that exacerbated all of this. However, not knowing at the time that I had that didn't help situation. So what helped me to kind of get out of these major panic attacks is I started to see a therapist, which she helped me learn meditation to kind of like control my breathing a little bit more. And then also to kind of reframe the whole thing in like knowing that Eric had come home thousands of times without being hurt, dying, or any of these other things. And so realizing that like it was all mental and that I could, you know, just remember all of those times so that way I wouldn't like dwell on the, oh my God, what would happen kind of thing. I think also during this time, my hypothyroid medication, the levothyroxine, started to really kind of kick in. So I think that helped as well. It does take a while, so it was a couple months in, but I think that started to kind of help level out my thyroid hormones, which weren't making me go kind of crazy with the anxiety there as well. So that was kind of a twofold thing. However, I still did battle with it. It wasn't like it was gone. It was still there. It was kind of like background noise. And I was able to kind of just keep it in a little box for a while until I had kids. And then once I had my first son, I would like every night before I went to bed, I'd like have these visions of my family like getting in car accidents or blowing up or, you know, just dying. And like I would have such a hard time falling asleep because I would have these visions in my head and I would like kind of work myself up and freak out. And I don't think I talk about this very much, but it was just a very difficult time because like every situation I was just like seeing the negative. I would see the terrible worst case scenario at all times, and I couldn't seem to get past that. Even though I tried to use my trick of, okay, well, I mean, they've gone to preschool every single day and they've been fine. It didn't, you know, these things would still come up for me all the time. I would use my tricks to kind of help push it back down, but it would still be coming up for me every day. And that was the hard part. It wasn't until I started the AIP diet back in 2014 where I actually noticed a huge difference. Now, I don't necessarily know if it was AIP getting my Hashimoto's under control that really did it, or being 100% gluten-free, because both of those happened at the same time. So I would say probably the gluten was probably a huge part of it, but also healing my gut and getting everything, like all the inflammation down and everything else in my body via AIP also helped. So like, it was like one of those side effects I didn't even expect. Like anxiety was such a part of my life that I just assumed I was gonna have that for the rest of my life, just like my mother did, just like her mother before her and her mother before her. So I just assumed that was just something that I would have. Did not even think of it like, oh, I'm gonna do AIP and get rid of my anxiety. No, I didn't even think of that. It just happened. One day I woke up and I realized, wait, I didn't have that issue last night where I was going to bed. And then a couple weeks later, still, I'm like not having any anxiety. Like it's gone, it's just gone. Like I had nothing, like I didn't worry. So diet definitely had a huge part in fixing this for me and making it go away. And like, I mean, it was just kind of amazing. So it's not to say that it's been gone like completely forever, because I have had some times where it's come back. Now, a lot of these times do correspond with my Hashimoto's flares. So that would be one of the first indications to me that I am about to have a flare or I'm in the midst of a flare, because I am starting to feel these kind of things. But I also notice there's some other things that kind of tip me towards having some anxiety or some like an anxious attack or something like that. So I just want to go ahead and mention these just in case you are suffering from anxiety or panic attacks or any of these kind of things, to see if any of these may help you, so that way you can try to overcome them, because life with anxiety is no fun. Trust me, I know. So the first thing I do is I always make sure I stay on a gluten-free diet, because I do suspect in my mind that gluten was a huge part of it. I also notice that if I tend to eat more sugar, then I start to have a little bit more of the anxious kind of feelings coming back. So I do, I mean, and this is sugar, this is maple syrup, honey, all of those, any kind of sugar. Just as if I'm getting into those blood sugar ups and downs, anxiety starts to creep back in. Also caffeine. If I have more than 1 cup a day, I also notice this they start to come back as well. And that also kind of goes hand in hand with sugar, because if I have more than 1 cup of caffeine a day, I also get more sugar cravings. And it's kind of like this big vicious cycle. So I try to stay only on 1 cup of coffee a day to avoid both the anxiety and the blood sugar ups and downs. Another thing that I've really noticed is sleep. If I don't get enough sleep, I am not well equipped to handle things that come my way. So getting a good 8 to 9 hours of sleep, for me, that's my sweet spot, is a great way for me to like handle any anxiety that comes up, because I can just kind of reframe it and use some of these other things that I'm going to tell you. Whereas if I'm tired, I just don't care. And then I, eat badly and all these other kind of things. But then also anything that comes my way just starts to kind of build upon each other and makes me start to get that anxious feeling again. I still use meditation. I do this pretty much every single day. It's just a period of time for my brain to stop thinking about things and to stop dwelling on things. And so meditation is just a break for my brain, a vacation for my brain, a way to just clear my thoughts. And by doing this, I've been doing this for a couple of years now, it's just 10 minutes a day. It's been a great tool in order for me to learn how to shut my brain off, so that way when I do start to have thoughts that lean towards the kind of anxious side, I can stop them, because I'm able to just clear my brain. I think, learning to do that is kind of like a muscle, so you have to do this over and over again to kind of get to that point where you can just be like, whoa, stop that thought, clear the brain, redirect your attention elsewhere, onto something else that's not going to like just continue this train of thought. Journaling has helped me a lot too, because sometimes if I feel like I'm churning and churning and churning over particular thoughts, journaling has helped me to write it out, kind of get the thoughts out, and then just I tend to have like either breakthroughs or just don't even think about it anymore after journaling about it. I think just sometimes your brain or something just needs to like come out, and journaling has been a great way to do that for me. For me, one of the big things for helping with those anxious feelings is also getting out in nature. They've done so many studies on this, like forest therapy, and I mean, just all these different things where cortisol levels definitely lower when you are out in nature. So just for me, it can be just sitting out back or just sitting on a park bench somewhere, just getting outside, getting the fresh air. If you can get near trees or something, that can help even more, because there are studies that say the trees really, really help. They emit things that help with our cortisol. So I know this is probably not for everybody, because some people aren't so nature centric, but if you are, this is a huge thing to be able to help just like naturally lower your cortisol and all of those stress hormones that could lead to anxiety or panic attacks. And another thing for me when like I'm feeling this building up is to write everything down. I think I mentioned this in another video, but just writing down every single thing that I have to do, like things that are like just weighing on my mind, like getting it all out on paper. So like a brain dump, but like, throwing up everything out of your brain that you are causing you worry, causing you anxiety or stress or any of that kind of stuff. Because I feel like overwhelm, when you have so much to do and so much going on in your brain, can lead to you thinking anxious thoughts and starting to have panic attacks and stuff. So getting it all out is really helpful. You can then take that and make a prioritized to-do list, but just getting it all out is just one of those things, like then it doesn't take up space in your brain. You have it somewhere where you can reference, and you don't have to think about it and churn over it anymore. And then it really does help with that overwhelm, I can't handle, I can't breathe feeling, and then you can relax. Then another one is living in the moment. This one has taken a lot of practice for me, because I really love to future trip. It's like one of my favorite bloggers, Gabby Bernstein, says this, future tripping, where you think of events that are going to happen or that could happen in the future, and you kind of like daydream or play them out in your mind so much that like you've got yourself worked up so much over what could happen, but it really hasn't happened yet, and it may never happen. And these could be conversations, or they could be things that could happen, like again, like what I was saying about my kids, where I was always worried about like their welfare. And like I would do this, I remember when I was seeing my functional medicine practitioner on a regular basis, I would always have these conversations, and I would get myself worked up that he was gonna be like, tell me not to do something. And I'd go to my appointment and he'd be like, no, that's cool, go ahead and do it. I'm like, I just spent like 30 minutes thinking that he was going to tell me not to do this or to tell me something completely different, and he totally agreed with me. How much time did I waste, and how much stress and everything else did I waste by doing that? And so I've had to really realize, like when I'm thinking about things that are in the future, that it's not really productive and it's not really helping me or anybody else. So living in the moment, thinking, okay, well, that hasn't happened yet, so let's not think about it. What's going on right now? I'm here, I'm healthy, I have all of my limbs, just kind of being thankful for everything, and just, it's in the moment. And it takes practice for sure. Not living in the past, all that happened before, not living in the future. You have no idea, you're not a fortune teller as far as I know, and you're not psychic. So don't live in the future, live in the moment. And it really does help. If you need some tools on how to do that, an excellent thing to watch is the new Brené Brown special on Netflix. I think it's called The Call to Courage. The first half of it is excellent, but the second half is where she really kind of talks about what we do as a society and how we've been taught as a society to fear and to live in this fear. And that's what I think really brings on the anxiety. And so I would watch that, because there's an excellent kind of commentary on us as a society and what we can do to kind of help it. And one more thing that I've done now, it's been a year and a half now, I think, Stop watching the news. The news is just going to cause you anxiety. That's just, I think it's there to cause us anxiety. It has been so nice to not watch the news because I don't hear or see stories about bad things that happen. And I still find out about all of the things that I need to find out about from other people. So it's not like I am some clueless, I have no idea what's going on kind of person. The news is just there to especially if you're empathetic like I am, like it's just, it can really, really get you right here. And that's not where you need to be in that headspace or living in that way. It's always so negative, and there's sometimes some positive things, but it's 99% of the time it's negative and it's controversial. And I mean, that's how they get their views and their ratings, is to be negative and controversial. And you don't need it. So if you are still watching the news, I suggest taking it, like try a week trial of a news fast and see if that really helps you. See how much better you feel when you just aren't weighed down by all of that information that you really don't need to know. And then finally, one thing I do need to note these days, I live in Colorado, so it's a big thing, but CBD oil has been known to help a lot of people with anxiety. I have actually been experimenting with a little bit. I take it on Saturday nights to sleep because Saturday night or Sunday morning is the morning I get to sleep in. We have that puppy, so she still gets up 5:36, but so I try it, and I've been sleeping like a, no, baby is a bad example because babies do not sleep well, like a rock. I've been sleeping like a rock every single time I've taken it, but I haven't really tried it during the day. But I have heard a lot of people say that if you are suffering from a lot of anxiety, and maybe if you haven't really gotten your diet into, like where it needs to be or anything like that, maybe try that because it may be able to help you as well. I just want to give that to you as a tool because a lot of people have had success with it, and some of these other things do take some time. So maybe try that as well. I do suggest taking the full spectrum one because I did try a not full spectrum one, and I'm not well versed in CBD oil, so don't come to me as like, some expert, because I'm not. But the not full spectrum one didn't do anything for me at all, whereas the full spectrum one seems to help. So just thought I'd add that just because a lot of people have been finding success. So it's something to try, but I haven't really personally used it for that reason. I was packing up my camera and everything, and then remembered one more that I really wanted to share with you that has helped me, and that's EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique, or tapping. And I don't know if you're familiar with it at all, but like you tap on acupressure points on your face, and there's certain ones, and then like your collarbone, under your arm, and it really kind of helps release the emotion, especially around certain kind of things that maybe you're holding on to and causing you to have anxiety. And I was using this a lot last summer when we were having issues with my dog that has since passed away. But like he would get me to this point where like we'd go on walks and he would be jumping after people and doing a lot of things, and I'd get so upset and like kind of like freaked out about taking him on walks and everything like that. So I would do this afterwards to really kind of release all of that anxiety. And I think I've talked about this before, but I tend to hold on to things a lot as well. I am really, really stubborn, and I've always had a hard time. Like if I get into a fight with my husband or get angry over something, if one of you leaves a negative comment on my YouTube videos or any of that kind of thing, I kind of tend to hold on to it. So that doesn't help with anxiety at all. So doing these kind of motions and talking through it, there's a specific way of doing this, really, really has helped. And so if this is something that you might be interested in, like honestly, this is one of the things that has helped the most, other than diet. And I think you should try it if you do suffer from a lot of anxiety and holding on to things. Brad Yates, if you Google him, he has a great YouTube channel that has a whole bunch of videos on doing this. And also in my paleo freebie library, I did do a stress relief, like just a general stress relief kind of EFT tapping video in there. You can get that. I will put the link below to get the password for that. But I go through an entire script of how to kind of just generally release just stress. I mean, it's not for a specific kind of thing. I'm not a licensed EFT practitioner or anything like that yet. I may actually get that, but not yet. But I do recommend trying it just to see if it really helps, because I personally think it has been a great tool. So those are really all the things that I've tried to help with my anxiety. Diet being the number one biggest one, I think. The lifestyle stuff definitely helps, but the diet is the number one biggest piece. Because I do notice if I get off of a paleo style kind of diet, anxiety is definitely one of the first things that comes back as well. And so for me, personally, diet has been the biggest piece. But comment below. Let me know if you have any other tips that have helped you, because again, we're a community, we wanna help each other. Let's all try to give our input and help, because what worked for me may not work for you, and what works, for you may help somebody else. So I'd really love to hear from you. And as always, if you have not gotten the password for my Paleo freebie library, you can go ahead and do so at the link below. And otherwise, I will see you next week.